What is going down, NBA fans? Welcome into another week of Dropping Dimes. I'm your host, Matt Knost, and we are going to start today's discussion with the unfortunate season-ending injury of one Jamal Murray. If you saw it, it's one of those things, man. I don't want to see the injury, and yet I have to see it at least once. I don't know why. It's this weird morbidity that exists where I am so perpetually drawn to it. It's like the Paul George injury or the Sean Livingston injury. I've seen them, and the thing is, you can't unsee it. So anytime a player gets injured, I don't want to watch the video, and yet I need to see how exactly it happened. And was it a function of mechanics? Was it a function of they put themselves in an awkward position, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like, what exactly was it? And it wasn't that crazy a basketball play. And watching it, as soon as he went down, starts just viciously grabbing his knee. You knew it was a blown ACL. Like, there's nothing else that's going to do that. And that really, that kills the Nuggets. It flat out does. They have made the push over the next season and a half by picking up Aaron Gordon and shipping out, draft assets and players that they see a window right now and they're going to take advantage of it. And because this happened with, 20-ish games left in the season, his recovery time, he's not going to be back until sometime near the end of next season. It could be, the worst case scenario is it's a full year. So it's this time next year, which is playoffs looming in a regular season right now. And to try and come back and get into full game shape as the floor general for your team is tremendously difficult. Best case scenario is it's 8 months, not 12. Like it's something along the lines of 6 to 7 months to recuperate, and then for professionals to get back to like game speed, average is 8 to 12 months. But given Jamal Murray, like his work ethic and drive, go read the stories of everything him and his dad used to do to train him. It is bananas, the amount of stuff he used to dribble on ice just to keep, to get his balance right and to make sure that he's running on the balls of his feet, do all kinds of crazy little things. So he's got drive and determination. So I would assume he'll be back on the lower end of that spectrum, hopefully like the 8-month range, but still 8 months. So it's better than 12 months. That's for sure. But, by putting everything in for this next season and a half, they have Aaron Gordon under contract for next year, and then he's a free agent. They have Michael Porter Jr. under contract for next year, and then he's a free agent. Will Barton, I believe, has a player option for next year. Paul Millsap and JaVale McGee are expirings this season. Their core of players, they're all young by and large. I think Jokic is the oldest at 26. Gordon's 25. Murray is 22, 23. And then MPJ is 20-ish. So they've got a young squad, a young, very interesting squad. But this is the year with the Lakers, tumbling. They're still going to be a tough out. But Denver matches up really well with a bunch of teams around them. So they would give anybody a hell of a 7-game series. And hypothetically, they could make it out of the West. They have enough firepower to do it. And, they're 7-3 in their last 10 games. Aaron Gordon comes to this team and he suddenly has the longest win streak of his career just by joining this team. Over in the chat, Ramon Cook says, good evening. And then Steven Salas says, Murray's 24. Thank you, Steven. But yeah, so 24. that puts them all roughly within the same timeline. But so now they're going to roll in with Campazzo playing some one, Will Barton, or not Will Barton. Anyway, Campazzo will end up getting more minutes. Monty Morris will end up getting more minutes. Is that going to be enough between the two of them to replace Jamal Murray? No. I guess this really tests the mettle of how much of an MVP Jokic is to close out the regular season here. He's right now easily the odds-on favorite to win it. But if they struggle to close out, I guess someone else could creep back into this discussion. Or if he carries them and they maintain roughly where they're at in the standings, then he's a lock for MVP. But you never want to see an injury to any player. I don't care who it is. If you like the game, even if I don't particularly care for a player, I don't wish injury on the individual. Like I don't like watching Trae Young play. I don't like watching him bait guys into fouls. But in no world do I wish Trae Young was injured and not playing. That's ridiculous. I just wish he would amend a couple habits. Now, they're tactically worthwhile habits. Getting guys to run into the back of you as you attempt to do a floater roughly from the free throw line is completely legal within the rules, and you're taking advantage of it. I just think it's not in the spirit of the game. I don't mind you doing it every once and again, but hunting for it numerous times a game, every single game, is annoying to watch. Like I watched that game with my Bulls where Levine went off in the first half, but you could see him hunting for it a couple of different times. He caught Colby White on it, but Colby White got burned by it earlier in the season and now is aware of it. I also don't like that Trae Young complains when he doesn't get a foul, and it's more so the face he makes. It's just a punchable face. It really is. A lot of guys complain. Numerous guys complain. But very few have as punchable a face as Trae Young does when he makes his face of why he didn't get the call, at least in my opinion. But anyway, back to the Nuggets. It's going to hurt them flat out, and it alters the trajectory of where they thought they'd be over the next couple seasons. There's a secondary effect as well, which is the Olympics coming up. If they actually end up going through, Jamal Murray was, going to play huge minutes for the Canadian team, and now he is off. They still have solid guards, the rest of the team, but it hurts their Olympic aspirations as well. So yeah, just tough to see. And I saw some players like Josh Hart was quoted, or at least he put out a tweet saying, this condensed schedule of 72 games in a short amount of times leading to more injuries. And, there's been a battle cry of that over the past X number of seasons, just with the proliferation of social media. Now players have more of a voice. So you hear what used to be gripes in the locker room or the reporters and whether or not a reporter actually printed it. Now you hear more of it. But on the face, you do kind of go, maybe there is something to that. And there's a great guy to follow on Twitter. His name's Jeff Stotts. He works for RotoWire, but he's also got a website, instreetclothes.com. And what's great about it is, so in the next couple days, my guess is they'll have a breakdown of Jamal Murray's injury and what the process is of him having to go through surgery and rehabilitation and the average timelines. And they break down from a medical side the effect that it has. Like any of these, they had one on Embiid when he had that came down awkwardly on his knee, and it looked like it was going to be very severe, and it ended up just being a bone bruise, thankfully. So he didn't destroy his knee and blow it out. but it's at In Street Clothes if you want to follow him. But he put out a tweet about ACL tears, and I'm just going to read this verbatim. It's a two-parter. Since the 2005-06 season, there have been roughly 3 in-season ACL tears per season. After Jamal Murray's ACL injury, we are now up to 4 for the 2021 season. The highest number of ACL tears in one season was the 2012-13 campaign when 7 players suffered the injury, including Rondo, Lou Will, and Barbosa. And then he put out another tweet talking about the average number of games per week is roughly right where it would be in a normal season. I think normal season, and this is off the top, I don't have the tweet in front of me, is the average team plays 3.25 games a week. So thus far through the season, the average team plays 3.46. And then for this closeout last 20 games, it's 3.76. And I think those numbers got juiced up to 3.76 because teams like the Spurs and the Grizzlies had so much COVID troubles earlier that they have to pack in more games at the end, which skews the numbers ever so slightly. Although that being said, it would also depreciate the numbers beforehand, but we're talking about a condensed 20 games, so I think it has more of an effect as opposed to the previous 50. So number of games per week is roughly on average, and right now, if there's no other ACL tear, then it's within, the statistical, I guess, standard deviation of where it should be. 3 is the average. They're at 4. It's not the high water mark. And the others are Dinwiddie, Fultz, and I can't remember the third from this season. And Dinwiddie's happened so long ago, it feels like another lifetime. Fultz is on some level too. I guess perhaps it's just the impact of Murray going down when they're in championship contention. Legitimately at this point, championship contention. Do I think they're the odds-on favorite if Murray were healthy? No, but I think given their previous track record, what they did last year in the playoffs, being such a tough out for a variety of different teams, and you could point to, the Lakers beat them handily, but they had just been through the ringer against Utah and against the Clippers. That's asking a lot of a team to play that many games in a short duration of time in Orlando and then turn around and play the odds-on favorite to win a championship once the Clippers go out. But they showed up, they came to play, so they have that playoff medal, and now you're adding in Aaron Gordon, who fits pretty seamlessly with what they do. And by getting rid of a couple guys, you pared down your rotation and kind of streamlined it for the playoffs. They were trending in the right direction. They're playing some of the best basketball of the season for them, and everything was on the up and up. And it's got to be just a huge blow to the locker room to lose, their second best player. So thoughts and prayers out to Jamal Murray. Fingers crossed, man, that you are in the low end of the rehab spectrum and you're back in 8 months as opposed to 12 months. But we'll see. We'll see. So we are going to be moving on now to the East. Now, last week I did, instead of focusing on the top of the West, I focused on the teams kind of middle of the pack a little bit. Talked about Denver, talked about Dallas, talked about, those teams that are trending in the right direction and are making it super interesting. And they're going to be tough outs. They're, especially in Dallas's case, they're beatable, but it's not going to be an easy series. And on the flip side, in the East, it's really 3 teams at the top. Boston has gotten hot as of late. It goes Philly, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Boston. There's your top 5. I can pull up the standings beyond that. Then we got Miami, Charlotte, Knicks, and then the 2 play-in teams, the Pacers and the Bulls. Now, in all honesty, as much as I love the Bulls, best of 7, I don't see them competing really with any of these teams. Right now they play the Hornets On paper, I still like the Bulls better, but the proof is in the pudding, and Charlotte just plays a much tighter game of basketball. Losing LaMelo has not hurt them all that. I mean, they're 5-5 in their last 10, so they're playing obviously 500 ball. But it's not like LaMelo was in late game situations. They're pulling him out. So as the season progresses and we get to these high leverage moments, how much would LaMelo have been playing anyway? And plus, you factor in the playoff game. Maybe he would have been playing, but heavy minutes and especially late, I think he's going to be on the bench just like he had been for a big chunk of the season. Might go back to starting, but closing out games, I would assume that he goes back to the bench in that regard. The Pacers are frisky, and that Pacers-Knicks game would be fun. And then after that, so, that 1 through 6, I think with Atlanta, Boston, and Miami all being roughly the same, I think it's a top 3 type of in the East. Whereas in the West, you can make a case for a lot of different teams. I don't think anyone outside of those top 3 are making it out of the East. Last year with Miami, outside of Heat fans, I don't know of anybody that chose Miami going into the playoffs to make the finals. Not a single soul. As good as they looked as they were going along, it was easier to start to see where they were playing really well and how that was going to be a problem for various teams. But going into the playoffs, nobody outside of Heat fans. And even Heat fans, I would say it's a small subset of individuals that really felt that they had a team that can make the finals. So I think there's 3 teams in the East that can make the finals, and then a bunch of teams that make interesting series, but I don't know that they would do much beyond that. So you got Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. And I have watched a decent amount of all. And it's kind of pick your poison. I don't think a single one of them is the odds-on favorite amongst the 3 to make it out. On paper, on balance, technically the most balanced team is Milwaukee, who's in 3rd place. They have a top 10 offense. They have a top 10 defense. Their point differential is top 10. So what I did on my notes, I broke down what I like about a team and then also what scares me. And the weird thing about Milwaukee is what scares me was the least amount of those top 3 teams when I was just bullet pointing out. What scares me, what I wrote down is they've been slipping as of late, but it happens. It's a long season. Their free throw rate is really low. And the only reason that is disconcerting is it's in their free throw rate. They're 25th in the league at 17.3 per 100 possessions. And this is most of these stats are from Cleaning the Glass. So you can go and look it up over there. But I also cross-reference at certain points. What Cleaning the Glass does, especially with offensive and defensive ratings and stuff like that, is they wipe out garbage time. So that doesn't affect what the actual team looks like. And I'm not saying the garbage time is not what the actual team is, but if they were to play their starters full or as much as they normally do if the game were kind of contested type of thing, as opposed to if it's a blowout. So they alleviate garbage time. But the free throw rate for Milwaukee, the reason that 25th scares me is Giannis is number 1 in the league in free throw attempts. So nobody else on his team consistently gets to the line. And yes, there are fewer foul calls come playoff time, but getting to the line is, something you need to put the other team into foul trouble. You need to get those free points. It also slows the game down and gets you a little bit of rest. It can kind of throw a wrench in the works for the other team if they have any kind of rhythm, and then suddenly you're going to the line a whole bunch, and it slows the game down and it puts it at a pace that perhaps you want. But at 25th on free throw rate, you're not getting to the line at all. At all. And especially with Giannis leading the league in free throw attempts, somebody else needs to help out on that front. Another disconcerting thing from them is they're 18th in corner threes right now in the league by percentage of number of overall shots and by, I believe, percentage of total threes. Now they've only had PJ Tucker for 3 games, I believe. So that number should go up. That guy is one of the best at corner 3-pointers. But it's such an easy shot to get over and over and over again, especially when you have somebody driving like Giannis and you added another ball handler playmaker in Drew Holiday. So open shooters should exist pretty perpetually. Then you factor in something like Brook Lopez likes to sit out for spacing reasons, but also Splash Mountain can shoot threes. Chris Middleton can shoot spot up. Pat Connaughton can get hot. Dante DiVincenzo can get hot. They've got guys that can shoot. So now it's just a matter of getting those easier shots. The last thing that scares me about them is they give up a lot of threes, and the percentage on those threes they give up is also very high, which in today's league, giving up a lot of threes and giving up a high percentage when people shoot those threes is a recipe for disaster come playoff time. But then you look at the overall numbers, and they are the most steady of these top 3 teams. Because the others, whether it's Philly, they've got a stout top-tier defense and an average offense, or Brooklyn, who has a stellar offense and an abysmal defense. It's, proven track record of champions in the past have been, you need to be good on both sides of the ball. It's a rare occurrence when a team wins a championship and they're not in the top 10 of both those metrics. I think it's only happened 2 or 3 times over the past, I don't know how many decades, but I'm going to guess 4. You need to be able to play both sides of the ball. So, according to Basketball Reference, they're great at getting, Milwaukee is, at getting offensive rebounds. They're they're middle of the pack on turnover percentage. Their effective field goal percentage is top 3. They're getting good quality shots and a decent number of threes. Their pace, they're one of the fastest teams in the league. They just, don't get to the line enough, and they give up too many threes. And when they give up those threes, the other team makes a whole bunch of them. And that is not good. That is not good. All right, moving on. We'll just go up from their 3 to Brooklyn. I'll check in with the chat real quick, see where we're at. Ramon says one of the best things in the world is a punchable face. Yeah, that's right. JJ Davi is asking about Klay Thompson. We can get to him at another time. Steven Salas says Boston is trending in the right direction. Scary to play in a 7-game series because they're better than people think they are. If they play like they did last night, against Portland, they got guys to step up when they needed. Marcus Smart looked like the bulldog that you'd love to have on your team. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are playing with the confidence. Kemba Walker's knee health is a discussion, and also their 5, because Tristan Thompson is not the answer, and then they had to get rid of Tice. So Time Lord and Tristan Thompson, and is that going to be enough to slow down the likes of someone like Embiid? Hell no. So they need to get quality offense from the other guys, and it's possible. It is possible if they would play Philly. Then Philly puts Simmons on, say, Tatum. So now you need Jaylen Brown and Kemba and Marcus, but Brown and Kemba to really shine if they're going to have a chance of this. But then, on the flip side, Philly's got Tobias Harris and Seth Curry and Danny Green with his playoff experience. I know that Philly fans have been upset by and large with Danny Green's up and downness, but guys won championships with 3 different squads. He knows what that locker room should be like and can steady them in those high leverage moments. So I think ultimately it's better to have him than not. Gary Wilson asks, can Miami get a 4 seed with Oladipo hurt? I don't know. I'm not putting it out of the realm of possibility. Just because I think it's top 3, and then those next 3 teams are all right now currently roughly in the same kind of area. Boston and Atlanta are playing marginally better basketball than Miami, but it's not like it's leaps and bounds. So it's possible, sure. Jeremy Bowers brings up a great point. Milwaukee and Philly need to prove themselves before I truly believe them to be contenders. And you could say the same, I'm sure some people do, about Brooklyn, but you've got Kevin Durant, who's been there and has been the apex of some of the best teams we've seen in recent history. So I agree with that. But we're going to move on to Brooklyn now. The Brooklyn Nets. All right, so what scares me about them? First thing I wrote down, how many personal days is Kyrie going to need in the playoffs? It's ridiculous at this point. They've had 54 games, the Nets have. Kyrie has played 38. And only a handful of those missed 16 games are for health reasons. Mental health, different. Physical health, just a handful. I think it's like 4 games for physical health reasons. The other was when he needed to be away, and he flat out said when he was asked, like, I just needed time off from the team. Dude, you're getting paid $30 million. You don't get just to call an audible. I realize you saw, LeBron do that in Cleveland, but the difference is, LeBron feigned bad back, but he had been carrying the Cavs, the Heat, and then the Cavs again, plus the league on some level. He had earned the right to say, I need a sabbatical. Now, we all, outside of Cleveland fans, thought it was mildly ridiculous at the time, but given the amount of minutes that he plays, it's looking back on it in hindsight, yeah, kind of makes sense. He should probably get a little break during the season. Whereas Kyrie, you're still in the prime of your life. You've missed a ton of games over the course of seasons, 2 injuries already. So what exactly mental health wise do you need at this point? And if this, like, he's away from the team now, although he may be back in the lineup tonight, I know that KD, Harden, Aldridge, and Griffin are out of the lineup tonight, thereby implying that Kyrie will be back. I know he was going to miss that Minnesota game that was never played because of the fucking Minnesota once again. But that, like, are you mentally, that's the first thing that scares me about Brooklyn. You've invested a lot of your team's capital, and not just capital money-wise, but minutes, roster space, the identity and psyche of the team into Kyrie Irving. Is he going to show up in the playoffs? I sat down on the trade machine last night and I did Kyrie trades for like 45 minutes of where could he go, who would take him, what would be interesting here and there. The easiest swap would be Paul George. And if I'm the Clippers, I'm not sure if I do it. If I'm the Nets, I do it. But that I'd have to get the okay from KD and Harden, but especially KD because he made the choice to go to Brooklyn to play with Kyrie. But if you had another wing defender, especially with Harden now basically going to be the primary ball handler and the other two are going to work off of him, you throw Paul George in that mix, suddenly some of their defense gets better. But so what else scares me about it is, so Kyrie's missed 16. KD's only played 22 games so far. Now, I think a lot of this has been, he's been held out on an abundance of caution just because he came off of a very catastrophic injury in an Achilles tear. And Harden has missed 7 games for them thus far. But he's still played 34. And by and large, Harden is pretty consistent. So I'm not worried about him. But of those 3 guys, and then you throw in like, okay, Blake on the buyout market. Well, he's had tremendous knee issues. And then LaMarcus, another that they picked up, has been steady throughout his whole career. But the past 2 seasons, he's been dinged up a little bit here. I mean, he is 35 years old. I do love that pickup for them, though. I think that was, given the choice of everybody that was available out there, LaMarcus fits a lot of what you do and what you need and gives you a great presence, especially offensively on the interior. Andre Drummond, the Lakers got, sure, rebound machine, but I'm not sure what exactly he'll do come playoff time. We'll see. But LaMarcus, I think, was a great pickup. The other thing to worry about with the Nets is their defense sucks. Flat out. Now, over the course of the season, they're 21st in defensive rating at 113.5. So they give up 113.5 points. But over the last 2 weeks, sorry, I'm trying to scale between, and that's 113.5 per 100 possessions. 21st in the league. But over the past 2 weeks, they're 10th in the league at 110.3. That's, if they can maintain that 10th, because their offensive rating for the season, they're at 119.4. And in the past 2 weeks, which their defense has seen an uptick, they're at 122.1, second in the league. They were second before for the course of the season at 119.4. They're also number 1 overall in effective field goal percentage. So they can shoot the lights out. And with somebody like Philly, Ben Simmons was quoted as saying a couple days ago, Brooklyn's great and all, but there's 2 sides to the game, implying their defense sucks so bad that I'm not too concerned, perhaps, is what he was saying, but he feels that they're a more balanced team because of their defense overall. And their defense is good. I mean, Embiid is going to give problems to DeAndre and LaMarcus and anybody else. And if they decide to go small ball with KD at the 5, Joel should feast offensively. Defensively, if he's got to post a guard KD, it could be tough over the long haul. Like, nobody is going to stop KD. The best you can do is hope to slow him down. But say you put Simmons on KD, that's fine. You got Embiid to throw elsewhere, but they still have James Harden. They still have Joe Harris. They still have Kyrie. They've got so much offensive firepower that if their defense can get, if the last 2 weeks is indicative of what they could be, and that's also in the past 2 weeks with that anomalous Lakers game where they took on the Lakers B team, and lost handily. But when you go and I was listening on the radio, it felt like the Lakers couldn't miss from 3. And then I went and looked at the stats afterward, and it was, Ben McLemore went 5 of 10. KCP, I believe, went 4 of 6. The worst shooter from 3 was Talen Horton-Tucker at 2 for 5, 40%. Everybody else shot above 40% from 3. As a team, I believe they shot 56% from 3. So I don't give a fuck who you are. If the other team shoots 56%, they could be all scrubs. They're going to win the game. They're just going to, especially at a high volume like the Lakers did. But in the past 2 weeks, with that game in there, they're still sitting at a top 10 defense. And that's with guys in and out of the lineup. They still haven't secured, like, we haven't seen a bunch of games with their playoff roster together. And I think some of that is what I said before, the abundance of caution of keeping guys out and getting rest and making sure nobody's gassed come playoff times. And you don't want any recurring injuries. But you also need to see those guys together so they can figure out exactly who they are. I mean, I want to see some formulation of KD, Harden, Kyrie, Joe Harris, LaMarcus out there to see what the hell that looks like. All playing for long stretches together. And then folding in and out DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin and Brown, and just seeing what the hell this team is. Because in that opening round, they'll be going up against, if they maintain the second seed, somebody like Charlotte. So I think that Charlotte isn't a cakewalk, but in no world does anybody that watches basketball think that Charlotte has a chance to beat the Brooklyn Nets. So you can get some game legs there, but you don't want to wait until the playoffs to figure out what the fuck your rotations are and, who you're going to have run with second units, who needs to get rest, when and where. They have a intelligent team, and it's pretty brutal, but you do need to figure this out. So what scares me most about them is just the fact that after all this time, guys are still in and out of the lineup, and I haven't seen enough of their core together to know how good and or bad they truly are. Because I think that offensive metric is right on the money, but the 10th in the past 2 weeks flies in the face of everything that we've seen from them the rest of the season. And I find it very hard to believe that that is the case. That being said, our number one team, Philly, their offensive rating is right at Brooklyn's defensive rating. So Philly scores damn near the exact number of points that Brooklyn tends to give up night in, night out. And then Brooklyn then scores another 7, 8, 9 points on top of that in any given night. And is Philly's defense enough to stymie that disparity between their two offensive inputs? That's the question. Personally, I like Brooklyn better, just in that I know what I'm getting from KD, and that kind of steady leadership should buoy James Harden. And Kyrie has come up big in big moments. We all know his shot from the finals. So I think given all that, I favor Brooklyn. But we'll move on to Philly, the number one seed. What scares me about Philly, their best offensive attribute by the numbers, according to Cleaning the Glass, is the mid-range. They shoot and hit more shots. So from 4 feet to 14 feet, they're fourth in the league. And from 14 feet to the three-point line, just in from the three-point line, counting as a 2, they're sixth in the league. So they shoot a boatload of mid-range shots. Now, it could be one of those cases where they're zagging when everybody else was zigging. So they're taking advantage of the inefficiency within the market, where if teams are going to give us mid-range, then we'll take mid-range and we're going to hit them. Very true. But they don't shoot a lot of threes. That's another thing that scares me. They're 27th in attempts at 29.7 per game. 29.7. Whereas right now, someone like Utah is averaging in the 40s per game. I don't have it up in front of me, but I just remember looking at it, kind of being blown away by the fact that Utah and the top tier teams are getting up that many more threes per game. On top of that, they're only making 10.9 threes per game, which puts them at 25th. So in those instances, say if they end up, say it's Eastern Conference Finals, and Brooklyn has a night where they legitimately have 4 guys that I trust at all times to shoot from 3. 3, undoubtedly, I trust. And if those guys are hitting any kind of decent clip from 3, Philly doesn't have the firepower to match. They just don't. They're going to get shot out of the gym. And at this point, it's, they can start shooting more threes, but if somebody like Ben Simmons is going to be entirely reticent to shoot threes, he shot a total of 9 this season. 9. Do you know who shot more threes on Philly than Ben Simmons? Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard shot 16. And technically, Dwight has made one more three than Ben Simmons thus far through the seasons. You need Ben Simmons to shoot. That's all there is to it. Ben Simmons does not shoot, and that is a problem. Put it to you like this. Simmons has played 10 more games than Embiid, right? And Embiid has scored 400 more points in 10 fewer games. Now, Embiid is more of a scorer, but you've had 10 more opportunities to close that gap. So you're saying, are you telling me that if Embiid had played those 10 games, he'd have an additional 200 points on him? 250 points on him? Like, that is incredible. You could harp on Simmons for the amount of not free throws, but turnovers he gives up. But I think when anybody has the ball in their hands that much, their turnover percentage is going to be high. Just go look at Giannis turns the ball over a lot. So does Trae Young. So does Russell Westbrook. So does LeBron James. So does Zach LaVine. Anybody that controls the ball that much, you're going to have a high turnover percentage. What you want is your assist turnover ratio to be good. And I don't know what it is off Simmons off the top of my head, but because it didn't stand out when I was putting together my sheet, I'm pretty sure it's fine. It's in the positive spectrum. And I apologize for not knowing that. I should, because it's a metric by which you can judge a point guard. Are they assisting on more baskets made than they're giving up the ball to the other team? It's an easy way to just look at a stat and go, yes, he's making wise decisions just based solely on the numbers. So Daniel Savola says, I know it's cliche, but defense wins championships, and Philly and Brooklyn don't have it. Philly can play D. They can. Without a doubt. By the numbers, over the past 2 weeks alone, they're first overall in defensive rating, but they're top 3 or 4, I want to say, for the season. So Philly can play defense. They can shut teams down. When you have like Thibault and Simmons out there, dude, those are 2 huge pests on the wing. And their length, quickness, agility, they're going to be able to shut teams down. The problem with Thibault is, as much as I love the guy, he's not a great scorer. So when you have him in the game, it is for defensive reasons, and he's excellent at it. But you're making it so when you have him and Simmons out there, that's a lot of lack of firepower on the offense. So you need the likes of Curry and Tobias Harris and Embiid and, on down the line, Korkmaz and Mike Scott and Shake Milton and Tyrese Maxey and everybody else that they need to pick up the slack. But when you have those 2 on the floor, it's like, ooh, that's asking a lot of the other 3 players, because then the other team's defense knows it too. Flat out, it's like, okay, well, we can back off Ben Simmons outside of 14 feet, maybe even 12 or 10. It's fine. We can give him a buffer. Even if he shoots it, he has no confidence in it. And I'll be shocked if come playoff time, he suddenly has a newfound confidence in his 3-point shot. So there you go. And it just clogs up the middle that much more. Reduces the spacing and the avenues by which the offense is able to generate points per possession. So it's tough. You're making trade-offs. It'll be interesting to see. But their defense is good. And Mr. Savola says, I stand corrected. No worries, man. I make mistakes all the time. And people point it out. And the bigger man accepts the fact that they were wrong and moves on. It's the little man that demands that, no, I am right for these bullshit reasons. And another thing you got to give credit to Philly for is winning the Curry-Richardson trade. He's been good for them. Hopefully his health maintains. He's played a decent number of games, but they're still asking a lot of him, and I want to see him do it in the playoffs before I am, confident that is going to be the case. And I know Philly fans, by and large, you're not pleased with Danny Green thus far this year. Although he is shooting elite from three. He's 41% from three is a not too shabby. Not too shabby. But it's the gripes. I'm curious as to whether or not Laker fans bitching about Danny Green over the course of the playoffs, whenever he'd miss a shot, carried over into people's perceptions of Danny overall, and that it compounds anytime he misses any kind of key shot right now. But once again, I really feel like a guy that has been a solid foundational player for 3 separate championship teams. I mean, you could say, okay, he was part of the system in San Antonio, right? But then he goes to Toronto and they win a championship, and they don't do that. If they just got Kawhi, I don't know that they do that, because Danny Green helped, I'm assuming, steady those guys in the locker room, because Kawhi's not a talker. You know, he's a shower. His actions speak for him. Whereas I'm sure Danny was giving pep talks and all that jazz and just trying to keep individuals calm. And then he goes over to the Lakers and he joins, LeBron as real championship material to help guide them to, having done it for 3 separate coaches and 3 separate systems, both conferences, I think is a testament to who that player is and what he can mean to a team. So you want someone like that around that is just a proven champion, flat out. So I know that Philly fans have not been the warmest to Danny Green. But I think at this point, given some of the offensive limitations of your team, it's much better to have Danny Green than it is to lose Danny Green, because you still get a little bit of the defense. He's nowhere near the defensive stopper that he was, say, with the Spurs. But it's not like he's a black hole, and 41% from 3 is nothing to sneeze at. So, solid player. You should be happy having him. But of those teams right now, I still favor Brooklyn. Just that firepower is going to be tough to match. Do I think they can win a championship? Yeah, I think they can win a championship. It comes down to who makes it out of the West, if they were to make it out of the East, to see what those matchups would be like. Because if they face anybody that has the offensive punch that they do, but then also can provide some sort of stout defense, like we'll see what the Lakers look like once LeBron and AD come back. AD is supposed to be reevaluated on Friday, I believe. But their defense is held strong throughout this. But they would have some nice offense. The Clippers are playing amazing basketball right now, kind of quietly. Nobody's really talking about it. Clippers would be a tough matchup. Steven Salas says, fuck Philly. Boston owns them. I hope Celtics play Sixers in the playoffs. We'll see. I don't know if Boston's current trend right now is sustainable. They have looked completely disheartened. In so much of the Brad Stevens, one of the most mild-mannered individuals in all of basketball and sports, called them out for their effort, which is not very Brad Stevens-like. So we'll see. We shall see. But that is it for Dropping Dimes today. Thoughts go out to Jamal Murray and his family. Hopefully he comes back stronger and healthier. Looking forward to the race to the finish in the East. Basically, the breakdown is the most even-keeled team appears to be Milwaukee. The highest upside is Brooklyn. And as Savo pointed out, defense wins championships, and Philly is a hell of a defense. So there it is. If things keep, trending in Boston and Atlanta and Miami get friskier and friskier, then we'll talk about them in the near future. But right now, I think it's a 3-way, a 3-team race in the East, whereas the West, it's still pretty wide open on some level. But that is it for Dropping Dimes today. You can follow me anywhere at Matt Knost. Stay safe out there. 6 feet apart, wear your masks, wash your hands, do all the stuff that your local medical guidelines are indicating that you should do. And I will see you guys next week for another edition of Dropping Dimes. Until then, adios.